between existence and non-existence, a mathematical problem and an invitation to existent reality. Sometimes I start with an anecdote, the writer says. When Cartesius was dying and arriving at the office of St. Peter for the procedures, his identity was asked, and he proudly said, "I am René Descartes, the philosopher who formulated, 'I think, therefore I am.'" And St. Peter answered with heavenly peace, "Good, you don't exist, but you don't think about it. But don't think about it. I'm certainly not mocking the rock, Peter, on which the Lord built the church, with the anthropomorphic representation of the entrances to the afterlife. But the anecdote hides a terrible element, which most people ignore, not only baptized Christian Orthodox, but even anointed ministers of Christ. Do we exist or not? I had a great fortune to be taught mathematics by my father from an early age, but also during my secondary education, I was lucky enough to be taught by an amazing mathematician for 6 years, so that later higher mathematics seemed like a breeze to me. Have a good time, my father, and Vasilis, wherever you are. I'm indebted to you because you taught me to think. Like Descartes, whether I exist will be seen later. Mathematics is one of the few sciences as defined by our ancient ancestors, hence existing knowledge to be discovered and not the construction of false knowledge, such as, for example, economics or law, but also the current division of real sciences such as medicine. A simple example, even for those who have been to first grade, to define the natural numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, I said first grade, the mathematical theory was, if there is an n natural number, then there's also its next n plus 1. Therefore, for natural numbers to exist, existence of 1 is required. If there is no 1, there are simply no other numbers. Most people are unaware that everything owes its existence to somewhere else. I might be asked if I dispute the existence of 1 in order to dispute the existence of all numbers. I answer just like Socrates, I don't know. I saw nothing. But I return the question, who verifies that 1 exists? Most people will answer, what the hell are you talking about? Now, don't you see the number 1? My dears, I'm not asking about the drawing that symbolizes 1. Since I was a child, my father made me write it. I generally ask about everything perceived by your senses if it exists, since science has never proven that we perceive what exactly our neighbor is. Just as I'm writing it to you, and it has been formulated by many philosophical theories, whose conclusions we embrace, because that is how they happened to us, but we did not understand it. Let me give you an example. A. Why do people disagree? Simply because they perceive situations differently, and there are others for everyone. I am not only referring to ordinary people with common problems, but also to scientists on scientific disputes. It's enough for someone to see if they want to see. There's also voluntary blindness with the subject of the alleged pandemic. Let me show you at least 2 scientists, either of one side or the other, who agree exactly on specific details. I'm not saying rough conclusions whether or not the virus exists while having the exact same laboratory or statistical data. So where does everyone's reasoning go and they did not agree? Scientists get to break up like couples who are tired of each other. Does the processing of data differ because of their mental impairment, or does everyone simply see data differently? However, if they exist, their assessment as true would be unequivocal. Most will say, what are you telling us? Are you going to confuse us with virtual reality? Dear ones, the Matrix and virtual reality have never particularly interested me, while most people do. How many don't live in the fantasy world of a video game or pseudo-state of Hollywood blockbuster? How many are mentally virgin so that they are not affected by these non-existent pseudo-states, so that they exist self-existing and not manufactured? How many don't copy the look of Hollywood hunk in order to look macho and entice the opposite sex or even the same with a non-existent existence? How many don't become faux bijou, according to faux bijou? You copied some influencers. Oh, what am I attracted to today with French Levantines? You adopted a Halloween mask so that they throw someone or some, regardless of gender, transgender, in their non-existent charm. I laugh bitterly describing these and similar situations in which I do not deny any participation, but I try to avoid them. But the issue is who judges the existent or the non-existent? Is there a universal reference system to judge it, or is the subjectivity of each one the only criterion? In addition to the bitter but existing laughable ones, we also live in other situations between existence and non-existence. Doesn't a flight simulator for training pilots fall under them, like an advanced video game? Because how do you live if you've been shot down? Of course, there are the counter-arguments that emulators are used for good purposes, but also here what is good or bad, respectively. What again is the universal reference system that judges these? Let me come a little to the reasoning of those who do not want to think deeper than everyday life and ask them, where is your money for the sake of which you existed? Where are your Social Security contributions for the pension you worked so hard to secure? Where is the even false joy that you experienced when today you live with the fear of insecurity? Do these exist? Did these exist? Did you think about that? And if tomorrow, knocking on the door of St. Peter's like Descartes, you are asked who you are and what you have done, what will you say? That you did not think but felt that you existed? Two recommendations from others to you. It's easier to deceive someone than to convince him that he has been deceived, Mark Twain said. And Soren Kierkegaard said, there are two ways to be deceived. One is to believe what is not true, the non-existent, and the other is to refuse to accept what is true. I continue the questions to those who are a little confused about what's coming. If tomorrow there is no money at all, will you consider whether it never existed and you just felt like it, like in a matrix of virtual reality? Because that's where we're going, to make money in general property, and that will disappear. It will disappear, or we will just realize it never existed. Who made the money? And I don't mean who printed it. Who created the values that money reflected? If tomorrow there is a minimal and not enough food, I repeat here, there we go. Who will interpret what has existed over time and what has changed? Who were the ones who expropriated properties for the sake of non-existent promises, so that they buy them at 1/15 of their value with the bank's money, which loses 14/15 of the value? And no one thinks why the losing bank finances someone make the bank lose. Do these exist, or am I just imagining them? I have been thinking about these things for many years, but when I try to discuss them, I hear from most of them, what are you looking for? Go get the vacation loan now at a bargain price to feel like royalty in Bali. Run to get a car loan, the imitation limousine of such and such a rock star. To bed faux visu, run to tumble your breasts and be seen as the lustful and to be flooded with parties. Run to get the poverty pass and be able to live now, and God has it. It was horrible to hear them, not only from my fellow students, with whom we lived and dreamed of improving the non-existent world with science, not only from classmates at school who learned the same letters, but even in my own house where I grew up. But I stand on one word just before, and God has. Echotheos, in other words, God will take care of everything. Which God? The a la carte? The one that each of us has created in the non-existence of his thinking? I initially mentioned the example with the existence of natural numbers. If one exists, so do all the others. No number is self-existent, but it owes its existence to the previous and the one. Similarly, man owes his existence to his parents, his predecessors. But the point is, where is the existence of our ancestors due to? Were they self-existent or manufactured and created? Our Lord Jesus Christ is called Lord, not because of lordship over everything, as they think. What is the future of him having dominion when he can at any moment create whatever he wants, apart from the fact that dominion reduces him, placing him in a material dimension? He is called Lord and self-existent. He is the one who does not owe his existence to somewhere, he who really has prestige. As one gives existence to the other natural numbers, so the Lord, one God, gives existence to all living and non-living things. The denial of the Lord is equivalent to the admission of non-existence on the part of man. Only the unbeliever passes into non-existence, since he is unable to give authority to his existence. Anyone who can document it for us after thinking about it, otherwise when he finds himself before St. Peter like Descartes, he won't even be able to say what he was thinking. On the contrary, anyone who truly believes in the Lord, but beware, faith is not, if it does not have works, is dead by itself. James 2:17. When asked by the apostle, will say, I am the prodigal child of the Lord my Father, and will immediately put on the first clothes. Rethinking the title of the article, Between Existence and Non-Existence, I wondered if it's correct. Is there space between something, between or not being or not being? Villages where even the non-existent has nowhere to be. Space is all occupied by omnipresent. The non-existence is the thing, non-existent. So those who deny Christ, where do they stand? Everyone exists with the omnipresent. They just have their router activated at different intensity, or completely deactivated for the connection with the Lord. What is called the soul, the divine breath, beyond conception. When your router is closed, you're simply off the network and unable to communicate. Even the most ignorant computer people know this. But there is something else. The magnanimity of the Lord, who gives opportunities to everyone for salvation within a constructed but an eternal and future finished world. Those who remain in it without repentance will perish. In order to be promoted to eternity, something important is required. To fully accept and try to implement what the Lord ordered, given that, for I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one iota or one beam shall pass from the law until if it always happens. Matthew 8:18. So until heaven and earth pass away, we are between existence and non-existence, between decay and incorruption, between mortal and eternal. So I urge that we also listen to Shakespeare to be eternal and not to be, or not to be or not to be. Certainly not until the final judgment, none before the end was blessed, Solon said. Existence is given only by the Lord, and he gives us authority. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.